We are live.
All
Uh,
right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode on this warm, sunny day, certainly out in Cambridgeshire. You're in London, aren't you, Tom?
Oh yeah, I've got the blind here. Otherwise, this is it's so sunny. It's blindingly sunny. So yeah, it's very lucky.
And the Daily Sim has sort of turned into an introductory weather forecast every day as well. So British of me. But yeah, I hope everyone watching as well, and you've had a good day so far, and ready for a nice, warm summer's week by the look of it. But today we're going to be talking about I'd say research and insights, but about open inclusion. And obviously Tom is here to lead us through today's discussion. So thanks for joining me, Tom.
My pleasure.
And we should, be open and disclosing of the fact I've worked for open inclusion now for it's got to be four. I always forget how many years, 4 or 5 years. It's roughly around that sort of time now. And my role has been as a panel lead, which will give a bit more context to open before we, mention some of that side of it as well. But as always, if you could just kick off, Tom, with a bit of a broad background and bio to you, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, no problem, Martin. Absolutely. So, yes, we have been working together for just over 4 years at Open. So, Open Inclusion is a London-based inclusive design and research consultancy. We work with a wide range of different clients in private industry, public sector, and third sector. And essentially, what we do is we're like the speed hump barrier removal system. That's how we see ourselves, which is about trying to make the world more inclusive, and that's really centered on identifying where the barriers are for people. And what I do in my role as research director at Open is I lead every aspect of research with people. We do research with people, qualitative research. We have a lovely panel of just over 500 people now across the UK, including Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales. We have a large majority centered around London as well. And we do all sorts of exploratory and other types of user research with our panel members. So the types of things we would do, for example, is we might be working on a project that explores physical inclusion, so accessibility of built environment. We might be working on projects for digital inclusion, so interesting, the world of apps or, digital assisted devices. There's so many options, and then we might also be looking at customer service and disability awareness among staff and among people who provide services. And to be honest with you, most of the time we're doing all three together in one form or another because so much of it is overlap. So yes, so I run research with our panel members. We do surveys, we do focus groups, we do journey testing, user testing, you name it. And we basically ask the people who really know, who are the people with lived experience of disability access needs, who might also just getting older, but kind of accruing access needs without identifying as being disabled. And we say, what do you think about this? Does it work for you? Does it not work for you? What would you change if you could, etc. So that's kind of what we do.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tom. And I always say, what my background was marketing at uni, and marketing 101 is that you ask your consumers or your audience what they want. You
Yeah,
then work out how you do that as a business, and then you give it to them. And then you've
that's
got
it.
a business on your hands, right? And I think there's so much history that we've talked a lot about on the show from very different perspectives, from disability rights to the Equalities Act on the legal side, but obviously a lot around the business case. And just for so long, businesses didn't see disabled people as consumers. That was almost fundamentally the problem.
Yeah.
But even when they did, they still didn't engage and talk with us like that. And I think that's the massive shift and the value that open inclusion brings, is that for one of the first times, I know there's different examples in different ways, but really doubled down and really got the infrastructure with the panel to make sure that, as you say, it's those with the lived experience, those that live and breathe that life with a disability, have
Yeah.
the answers for the businesses, or at least have the insights that lead to the answers for the businesses.
Totally. And another mantra we have is test early and test often. So we like to get these insights as early as possible in the design process. I mean, I'm a designer by training and a
I was going to ask
researcher.
a bit about your background as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I have a lot of experience in various forms of research, having been in academia for a long time. But essentially, I trained as a designer, first in industrial design way back when in the '90s, and then as the field of user experience and inclusive design specifically picked up. I'm Canadian, as you probably know, and your viewers probably can tell. So it was in Toronto that I studied inclusive design and specifically, making products better for everyone. By focusing on lead users and users who have access needs, who are really like stress testing products to their max. So yeah, where I see it, I come from a design background, and inclusive design and talking to people who really experience access needs and have access needs day to day is such a cornerstone of the design process, as well as the messaging and marketing and other aspects of product development.
Yeah, cool. So it was when did Open start? Do you know the year that it began?
Oh gosh, well that's before my time. So I believe it was 2013, 14, around there.
Yeah, and obviously
Yeah.
Christine's been on the show about a month ago, and so yeah, did talk about the sort of the founding story and obviously bits about what Open does.
Yes.
It's really lovely to get your personal involvement and your background, and it's nice to bring that to it. But obviously, we'll be able to touch upon some of the latest updates and what's been going on.
Absolutely.
I mean, looking at sort of since you've joined Open, bringing us up prior to COVID, and we'll very much get stuck into that in a minute. But when you look back over those sort of 4 or 5 years, what have been the sort of challenges for Open, but also the highlights, some of the highlight projects you've worked on as well?
Oh my gosh. Oh well, we've worked on some amazing
There's a
projects.
lot, right?
Yeah, there's quite a lot. I mean, I think in total, since my time at Open, it's been over 40 or 50 separate projects that we've delivered research for. So we've been busy, which is amazing. And it really says something, I think, about inclusive design picking
Mm,
up in the years, as the years go by. But I mean, so we've worked, like I say, across physical, digital, and customer service. Some of the projects that stand out is like working with high street retailers, really to kind of help improve the entire end-to-end user journey or customer journey. That might include in-store retail, in-store sorry, in-store digital, such as payment point machines, self-checkouts. That can also include the physical layout of the store, and then the customer service of staff. And we've also done a lot of innovation work, and that's really something I'm very proud of. So
mm,
we've looked at inclusive immersive experiences. We've been involved in discussions around inclusive design of autonomous vehicles, some VR, AR, virtual reality. So it's really, really interesting, the kinds of where we're trying to push the envelope. And we find that it's very exciting because, of course, some everyone's in a different place on the inclusion journey, and that's perfectly fine. I
mm,
think many industries and I should say organizations, they have now realized the value of inclusive design. Not only that it's the right thing to do, which is a given, but
mm,
also because why wouldn't you want to include everybody? Like that's just the right thing to do. But also it makes business sense, massive business sense. And
mm,
so a lot of organizations are past that initial entry point, and we've been able to explore innovative ideas. Like we've worked with Brunel University, Cambridge University, on innovations in inclusive design, really pushing the envelope. And at the same time, industry is pushing things very hard as well. And there's a lot of interesting projects being done at the interface of digital and physical. So really kind of connected homes, different types of user interfaces like voice. interfaces. We all know Amazon Alexa has been a
Mhm.
really runaway hit, but
Yeah,
especially with the disability community, it's in some cases been absolutely life changing to some people, as we know because we've done research on this. So yeah, there's a lot to be excited about. It's amazing how much we've done that since I've been involved in open in
yeah.
in 4 years time.
Yeah, that's great. That's really helpful just to sort of frame some of the
Yeah.
goings on. And you've sort of touched on the question here that Chris has asked, which is where does open inclusion succeed most, i.e., transport, education, employment? I mean, it's probably was in your answer before, really, wasn't it? Around that innovation definitely has been an area. I know Christine's very in finance, isn't she? So there's
Yes,
been
we've
a lot
done a
of work.
lot of work. So yeah, innovation is definitely one area where I would say, have an impact. But other than that, in the more sort of established milieus, finance, retail, and transport are probably the areas where we've done the most. And
Yeah.
so I'm thinking of some very interesting research we've done to help, create accessible experiences for neurodiverse travelers going through busy train stations. That's a project we did last year in conjunction with TFL and our friends at Calvium, who are an amazing mobile app development company based in Bristol. So we work with them to help improve the experience for people who have high anxiety, who might not always, be able to understand directions very easily, and in kind of high stress environments like busy train stations and underground stations. That's just one example. We've worked with airports as well, and then yeah, across banking and finance, quite a lot actually. We do a lot of work there
Yeah.
as well.
Perfect. A couple other comments coming in. So Jane saying hi Martin, so hi Jane, and Gavin saying great to see Tom on the show today. Love open
Ah, Gavin.
inclusion. Only a matter of time before we find a way to work together. Also great to see Tom taking the reins. So
Nice shout out from Gavin. Nice to hear from you, Gavin. Great.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we had Gavin on the show as well. So it's quite nice. We got the sort of mixture of the viewers coming on the show sometimes, and just a real sense of community coming under the Daily Sib now, which is lovely to see.
Well, Martin, it's all your great doing. I mean, what can I say? That this is an amazing platform.
I'll take some of the credit, but the guests make it as well. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I mean, well, I guess you might want to frame the answer here that I'm about to ask within one of the current sort of research, the examples that we're going to get into. But it'd definitely be helpful just to really break down for people what is it, what's the process. So if a client is saying yes, we want to work, we want to understand something, what would be the steps that Open would take them through normally?
Yeah, so clients approach us, I guess, in a variety of ways and from different perspectives, as I said, along that inclusion journey. But of course, there are some consistent aspects of then client engagement. So of course we would start off with meetings around, really my role in those meetings is to understand from a research perspective, what do
Mm,
clients want, what do they hope to get from the research. So are we looking at a rather general and broad, dip a toe into the community via a survey to understand what are attitudes around certain services or products, or is it more specific? Is it about testing a prototype?
mm,
So and then ultimately, where do they want what do they want the research to do? Is it to prove out a business case, or is it to talk at a conference and get others interested in the idea more generally? Is it to bring a product to market? So that's the first step, is to engage with the potential client, and then find out what they really want, see what we can do, explain to them what Open's about and the kind of services we provide, and then find a common agreed upon program of research. So and we usually do multiple phased research. So we won't just do a survey, but we'll do a survey and a focus group to back up the insights from the survey, and maybe some usability testing.
mhm,
um, and then it's to put together a proposal and get the clients on board with us, and then we work with them. A lot of the projects we do are a few months long, although some do extend even over a few years. But those are much more involved and complex. But yeah, a lot of what we do is will be a kind of 2-3 month engagement. And then we wrap it all up with typically a report and a presentation. We always offer the option for workshopping. I love talking to designers and researchers and members of management and what have you about inclusive design, and really about to get the most of the value of what they're getting from our
Mm.
insights, is to kind of contextualize the insights in the wider scheme of things.
Well, context is everything, isn't it? Because as much as some
Absolutely.
data, X
Yeah.
number of disabled people said this app was crap, for example.
Yeah.
It's okay, but why? Why is it not good? And how do we then try to make that better as well?
Or you might get people saying quite legitimately, they have a very good point, which is, look, this is causing friction for me in this way and that way. But of course, context wise, we know to prioritize certain things over others just
Mm.
because of the realities of business and the realities of we often will look at, okay, what changes can we make in the short term. So if you've only got so much budget or you've only got so much capacity for change, this is the low hanging fruit. Let's get this at the very least covered. And then medium term and even long term. And that's where some of the innovation ideas come in, which is really exciting.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And I was also thinking around the panels, so how, from the sort of disabled people's perspective that are involved with the panel. I mean, anyone watching that's not on the panel, I know you're always looking to recruit new panel members,
Yes.
but could you just chat a bit more about how the panel works within that as well?
Yeah, so our panel, we call it a panel community because it's really a pretty close knit community. Having said that, we just by virtue of the situation, I can't possibly be in touch with every one of our panelists as regularly as I'd like to be.
Mm.
But we invite people who have lived experience of disability, access needs, or who may simply be over 65, getting older, and kind of dealing with certain barriers in their day-to-day experiences, to go on our website. We have a panel sign up form under the little panel tab, and you
Mm.
can also read more about the panel itself. But in short, we try to involve all of our panel members in research as much as we can. Usually panelists are used to getting an email from me about once a month based on research that we're doing, although sometimes it can be a little bit longer than that. And yeah, we involve people very much for projects. We only contact them when there's a project that we think would be suitable for them. Um, and then other than that, of course, the panel leads, Martin, of whom you are one, is
Mhm.
my kind of close team that we meet fortnightly, and we really kind of keeps me honest, actually, in terms of what are the trends and yeah, what's going on in the communities themselves. So we have 6 panel leads. Martin, you're the panel lead for mobility dexterity community in our panel. Then we have a panel lead for vision, hearing, um, just older panelists, fluctuating conditions. So people who might have multiple sclerosis or you'd be managing chronic pain, conditions that can one day go to 10 and other days go down to 0 and so on, which we find brings a very interesting perspective on disability, because it's not that consistent lived experience, but it's a fluctuating one. And then,
Yeah,
of course, oh,
no, go
sorry.
on.
I was
Finish the
just going to say,
second one.
wrap up, of course, neurodiversity as well, panel lead for neurodiversity. And that's a wide ranging spectrum, obviously, that
Yeah,
encompasses dyslexia, dyspraxia, low IQ, memory, autism spectrum, etc. So, in a very quick nutshell, that is our panel, and it's comprised of the team around me, the panel leads, and you guys even help out with the research, as you know, because I will often send surveys your way as we design them to say, what do you think of this survey? What's your experience like taking it? Is it accessible, first of all, but is it also a good experience? And do you think it captures what we're looking for? So,
yeah,
and then the wider panel is who we do our research with. And yes, I would invite anyone who's on this call to please have a look at our panel page on Open Inclusion website, openinclusion.com. And if you like what you see there, we always pay for every research involvement that we ask panel members to be part of. That's something I believe in very strongly. So we try to be fair and considerate, because these are precious insights that panelists share with us.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I was just going to add that the point about the fluctuating conditions and sort of my panel area of mobility dexterity is that there are some similarities at times, but it's that,
Yeah.
like, for me, there's a probably, yeah, more of a constant, like I'm in my chair as long as I've got my care team and the ramps on the train works, like it's kind of predictable. Whereas, yeah, with some of the different like ME or chronic fatigue and those sort of things, there's good days and bad days, and that's
Yeah.
obviously a different kettle of fish. And yeah, I think that segmenting is very helpful, because I think the business case and a lot of the stuff that Caroline and Marianne are doing on Valuable 500, obviously, that we're all very in league and allied and all supporting each other with, it is fantastic. But when we talk about those big lofty figures of 1.3 billion people with disability or the $8 trillion market, it's then quite hard to break that down when you don't know. And so I think this way of segmenting is very useful. As you say, even within the neurodiverse community, there's still a lot of very different
Oh,
conditions and
totally.
everything
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
it just helps to just break the community down into more understandable areas, which for me was very valuable when I learned that from you guys as well.
Yeah, and we try to include people in our research, because we do qualitative, so it's often small scale. Maybe it can be as little as 6 people doing a user test, or maybe 20 people, which is still fairly small numbers. But we try to include people with lots of different, access needs. So, and our panelists are quite varied, and they do have different access needs. So, something like mental health, for example, does factor in. I almost never have to recruit specifically for mental health, because that's simply if many of our panel members will also identify as having some mental health
Mm,
conditions and needs, but also people who are vision impaired, but also mobility impaired.
mm.
So it's interesting, but yeah, we try to get the best bang for the buck in that way. And I got to say, our panel members are amazing. It makes my job so much easier and more pleasant, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you sort of did touch on it a few moments ago, but I think it's really important to hit home that that there is an incentive and a remuneration for the people that
Absolutely. That's really
work.
important. Yeah.
And that's been very innovative and disruptive in itself, because for so long it was very much disabled people were brought along as volunteers,
Yeah.
even though it was adding this economic business case value to the brand and to the consultants and agencies in the middle. So I think it's really amazing that that's been recognized. And yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that point, that there is
Yeah.
payment for the people involved.
And I think it's important to contextualize here that, I mean, some organizations are doing amazing work, and they may happen to be a charity, for example, and they have a slightly different system than we do. But we're a private company, and we believe in paying directly to our panel members for for insights that they provide. It's all about creating a great user experience, which is kind of what I really believe in very strongly. And that is, I take, I mean, I'm very aware about how precious and important and central to our organization panelists' insights are. So even though we can't quite make 500 people into employees, but in some ways they are at the center of the
Yeah,
company.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, I believe in remunerating fairly for that.
Yeah. I mean, when Caroline talks about valuable, not vulnerable, the valuable part
Sure.
of
Yeah.
Valuable 500, but of that marketplace, it's we as disabled people are the consumers that will ultimately bank with the bank, and that take the better brand that is a better hotel or whatever it might be. So yeah, it's just amazing how we're joining all the dots up, really. So yeah, it's good stuff. So let's get into a couple of sort of more kind of case studies, but I guess more just bringing us in to COVID-19. Obviously, the world was
Yeah.
turned upside down back in earlier parts of the year. So it'd be great to hear some thoughts from you about what that's meant, but obviously what Open have been doing in response to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is one of the, it's interesting because lockdown has just turned everyone's world upside down. One of the things that we realized early on is, okay, well, I mean, this is what we specialize in, really, is kind of change at the forefront, perhaps disruptive change. What opportunities would this afford? And we know from our panel members that many people are already may feel vulnerable in various circumstances. So what are they feeling? What are they experiencing? And again, always looking at the positive. What opportunities may be being presented here through lockdown? And so we decided to do a diary study, which is a type of research which is over a period of time. So it's essentially like feeding back to us in very short snippets. It could be as a written survey, or it could be we've actually asked most people to answer by video or audio snippets, just to take a little bit of time out of their day and to answer basically, how are they feeling that day? What's their mood like? And then what have been some of the access barriers they faced, and also some of the workarounds that they've explored? What have they been doing? And we kind of framed it around 6 themes. So there's communication, work, leisure and entertainment, food and essentials. So getting food and essentials. There's, oh yeah, health and fitness, which
Yeah.
is very important in the current context, and then
The finance.
finances.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we now the diary study's wrapped up. We've done our 6 weeks, and we had like a theme of the week for 6 weeks.
Mhm.
And so we engaged 12 people in total. We had originally 13. One person got ill. I wasn't able to continue, which is fine. She's doing much better, by the way. So that's good. And yeah, across a wide range of living conditions, situations, household finance situations, and also ages. So that's the setup. And then, as I say, we asked about those themes, and we got lots of interesting insights from those themes. And you know, I'll just share really, really briefly top level here with you. But unsurprisingly, some negative emotions were creeping in over the course of the lockdown. There was a lot of stress and anxiety, mental health factored very big in our research, mental and physical health, unsurprisingly. But then over the course of the 6 weeks, we found that things like loneliness, frustration were going up. People were reporting a little bit more of that. Um, Having said that, though, people were also finding really interesting workarounds and strategies to keep happy, to keep buoyant, to keep their moods up. Exercise, people were discovering new exercise regimes. They were discovering new ways to be entertained and, take advantage of all the amazing wealth of things that are online. And so, what we've really noticed here is the opening up of services online. I'll give you one quick example. We have one panel member who is now taking part in choir,
Mhm.
virtual choir, and she loves it. And she actually has mobility condition, and quite a lot of fatigue and pain and so on. And for 10 years she was avoiding going to choir because the commute, and let alone being in the choir for a period of time over an hour, what have you, and singing was just physically exhausting.
Mm.
So she's never actually been able to be in a choir until now. And
Mm.
so she's kind of discovered this amazing thing in her life, and she's super keen. It gives her lots of motivation, a reason to feel
Yeah.
happy in the morning.
And that's so interesting, Tom, because as you know, I was the other way. I've been in a choir, and it for me, I
Yeah,
work at home, which is
yeah,
better for my energy.
yeah.
I'm not I struggle to if I had to commute to work and do that, and,
This is something we hear a lot of.
yeah,
Yeah, that commute is
that's
a killer.
that's
Yeah,
been, like, almost I felt less guilty or less obligated to go places when it takes a lot, whereas I could just do it at home and it's easy.
yeah.
But the choir, I loved it because I got to go in a room with people, and now my choir is online, having been on Zoom all day long.
I
The last thing
know.
I'm gonna do is go on to that. So it's very interesting the different
Yeah.
ways it plays out. Yeah.
And Zoom fatigue, or fatigue of being on the computer all day, every day, is something we've certainly been learning about as well. So yeah, there's quite a lot. But I would invite your viewers, if you're interested. We're presenting the results. Well, we've presented the results from the past 4 weeks of our 6 week study already.
Mhm.
We do it fortnightly. We are presenting the results this Friday, Christine and myself, for the last 2 weeks of the study,
Mm.
and I'll try to send you over some details there that maybe you can share to that uh, presentation that we're giving on Friday. But also, we have included the past two presentations that we did on our blog. So if you go to openinclusion.com onto the blog, there's there are videos there of Christine and I presenting our findings from the diary study. So you get a lot more detail about that. But I mean, one of the things that I really wanted to focus on today, because I think it's really interesting and important, is how people are thinking about the future.
Mm.
And kind of what one thing that we've noticed, so as the diary study wound to an end over the 6 weeks, and this coincided with the UK gradually opening up, lifting lockdown a little bit, uh, in addition to some of the usual sort of confusion around, well, what can and can't I do. But we noticed there was an interesting and quite natural, I think, concern over, well, all these marvelous changes that we've enjoyed over the lockdown. For example, easier ways to do fitness classes online,
Yeah.
and just the accessibility of things as well that has actually improved in a lot of cases. Will these approaches stay long term? And one of our diary study participants actually worried about the long-term impact for disabled people of the benefits and wins, that they've really been at the heart of over the past few years. Will businesses, now that there's economic hardship, now that people are being furloughed, now that the situation is what it is, will businesses loosen their commitment to inclusion, or will they strengthen it? And that's a key question, right? And it filled this one participant with fear, because she worried that a lot of the gains that were made would actually be kind of reversed once lockdown gets lifted. And that's what I wanted to talk about, because I find that really interesting, this idea of inclusive design and inclusion going forward into the future. And
Mm.
if I may, Martin, I'll just segue my own self
Yeah,
into
yeah,
our
absolutely.
the other thing so the diary study was one project. Now another project that we've been involved with is for the with our friends at the Center for Aging Better. And Aging Better is, as many people probably know, is a charity that's devoted to really thinking about the future. And as our population is aging, we're all in it together. What measures, if any, are being taken and planned for by people themselves who are over 50? And we segment this into three groups: so 50 to 60, 60 to 70, and 70 and over. And this project was interesting because it's an example of the inclusive design uh, and research that we do for physical environment. So this is kitchens and bathroom designs within the home. So the idea of a future home. And
Mm.
where I'm going with this is, again, questions about the future. So it's about thinking about inclusive design into the future. And what we found here is there's a huge need in and amongst our participants who were taking part, and they would like future-proofed homes. They are ready to make changes. There's an appetite for change, but they don't know where to look. There's a lot of confusion around, well, what even is inclusive design? Is it adaptations? Is it that what many businesses are afraid of, which is a kind of, and many disability groups rightly are afraid of, which is just a band-aid solution slapped on after the fact? Or is it something more lasting and more fundamental? And that is something I wanted to speak briefly about, because I really believe in that. As a designer, I actually got involved in inclusive design for a variety of reasons, but one of them being, I actually think that inclusive design is just a part of good design, and it should be baked in from the start into, who wouldn't want to test your products and services with a wider range of users? Like, why wouldn't you want to do that? I
Yeah.
think any designer would say, yes, I want to do that. Let's stress test things. And we know from past experience that anytime we have stress testing, be it, trying to send a person to the moon, or F1 racing, oftentimes incredible innovations come out of that environment of stress
Mm.
testing. So what is inclusive design? And what we're finding with our work for the CFAB is that people want inclusive design. People want to make their lives easier. They're already using various hack solutions, but the products that may actually help them, that they could install into their kitchens, into their bathrooms, maybe buy, for their to help them in the future. they don't know about those products. So
Mm,
this then illustrates how inclusive design has to be more than just the designers talking about it. We have to involve marketing, as you started off saying. We have to involve the staff at the retail outlets, right? So
mm,
B&Q, John Lewis, wherever people are buying stuff for their home, we need to have staff to be aware of what inclusive design is.
mm.
Um, so it's an interesting project, and I think it kind of nicely relates to the diary study, because the diary study is a lot about the future, and then this project is also about the future and what is inclusive design looking forwards towards our futures.
Yeah.
um,
No, that is really interesting. I mean, the interviews I've been doing here have not been by any means for a study or sort of with a structured questions that can then be analysed it very, very much more like you've done with the diary study. But I know that the general feedback has been, that from COVID-19 there is both sort of good and bad during lockdown and good and bad going forward. But I think it's really nice to have that Centre for Aging Better perspective that that there is this need for the answers to be baked in at the beginning, but also like you say, the marketing side is it's a good verification for Purple Goat, because that's exactly where we're
right.
sitting in it, is trying to say, right, there are already businesses that have done good stuff, but let's get that out to the disabled marketplace. Let's use marketing communications to spread that, and let's use influencers to authentically and genuinely talk about those products and services and brands. So no, it's really, really exciting times. What was on the product side? What did you sort of learn of any products particularly that are useful, or particular parts of kitchen and bathrooms that really need
Oh, sure.
innovation? Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I'll just give some mainstream examples of inclusive products that I'm talking about. So,
yeah,
there, because people might be wondering, well, what is mainstream inclusive design? And products like the Dyson vacuum, OXO Good Grips are a well-known example of a mainstream product that was designed with inclusive needs in mind, but has really become mainstream. The Amazon Alexa, as I mentioned earlier, is a great zero UI. We call it zero UI, means there's no buttons interface or there's no mousing. It's voice controlled. And what's amazing there is we're finding a lot of older people have actually bypassed the whole mobile phone interface, because it's a little bit too unfamiliar for them, perhaps. And I don't want to generalize. There's plenty of tech savvy older people who are like first in line for new products, but quite a lot of our older panel members, for example, have really taken to Alexa because it's such a easy to use interface.
yeah,
So people use these products in the kitchens, less so in the bathroom, but in the kitchen especially. you know. Um, so the question is, what other products are out there that retailers are, that have inclusive, for example, a washer dryer that has voice interface, right? That exists, right? And many people with dexterity issues, with vision loss, could benefit from that massively. Touch screens, don't even get me started, but that's another trend that is very difficult, for example, for someone who's VI, who can't feel the buttons or the controls. So and we found products like this, but interestingly, and most importantly, our research participants did not know. Like, they saw a washing machine. They didn't know that it had a voice interface. They
mm,
didn't know that it would be a perfect future, a product for their future home in
mm,
a bathroom or kitchen scenario. So how can we get the message out? How can and staff didn't even necessarily know, or they didn't know enough to emphasize the feature, I should say. So again, it's about understanding who your customer is. If
mm.
someone with a vision impairment walks into the showroom, to take them to that particular product, to think that this might be useful for them. So
Customer service, isn't it? In the end of the
yeah,
day,
it
but but
is.
but tuned into that the disability aspect, which
Exactly.
previously people were not aware of, or trained to factor in, right?
And I'll just add one thing. To be fair to to all these amazing retailers, they want these products obviously to sell. They want,
Yeah.
manufacturers want products like this out there. Um, Oftentimes, what we get from the other side of things is that a retailer will tell us, well, they're nervous. Quite
Mm,
frankly, they're nervous. They don't know what to say. They don't know what language to use, or they're nervous to ask. And one of the nice things about our research that I really take heart in over the 4 years is that I've never run into a disabled person who says, well, I don't want to tell the retailers anything, or I appreciate if they ask me how can they help me. There's such an openness among the disability community to to inform people. No one expects. I mean, I don't want to speak for other people, but from our research, I know that many of our panel members, they don't expect a retailer to be an expert in their particular condition or
yeah,
disability.
exactly. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but to simply be able to say, well, how can I help you? What would be a product or service that what are your needs when
Yeah.
looking at this particular?
And if they know the product, which
Yeah,
they should do, they'll be able to work out, like you say, someone has a dexterity difficulty, so voice control
exactly.
would be good, and then you find the one.
Exactly. Just that little bit of awareness.
Yeah.
And, and I believe that is happening now. As I say, I mean, when I started in inclusive design, God, it was almost 10 years ago. I mean, the world was in a very different place vis-a-vis inclusive design,
Mm,
and that was in Canada as well as in the UK. And then, I moved to the UK in 2016. And in a lot of ways, there's more stuff going on in Europe and the UK than in North America in terms of inclusive design. So,
right.
yeah, and that's really encouraging. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff going on over there too. And really, over the past 5 years, it's kind of gone up exponentially now. So
Yeah.
that awareness is building, and the very fact that we're being asked to do research like this with retailers involved. I should say we have expert partners involved, and in fact, only one segment of this research is consumer focused. The whole other segment of it is interviews with retailers themselves. We've had very, very much interest from marketing, from design teams, from people who are wanting to serve customer needs, and they want us to help them understand how best they can do that.
Yeah. Well, one thing that keeps coming across my inbox or generally in my attention the last week is around fashion. There
Yeah.
seems to be a bit more bubbling around, but I'm still trying to work out if it's inclusive design fashion or if it's the patchwork adaptation fashion. What's your take on the fashion world?
And that's the key distinction that we're talking about here, which
Yeah.
is that inclusive from the start kind of considerations versus the band-aid solution. Fashion's an interesting area, and I got to say, I'm to be perfectly honest with you, um, now my knowledge of this is probably about a year out of date, but you know, uh, I feel that in some ways it's been an industry that has been a little slower to the
Mm,
inclusion game than in other industries. But that's not to say they haven't made incredible strides. I think they're, but yes, and there's still that stigma out there, which I mean, as a designer, I'm very passionately against this stigma. But this idea that inclusive products have to be ugly, what
mm,
what what that is totally, totally wrong. So,
yeah,
yeah. Now, what we're finding is, again, I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of great strides being made, but sometimes fashion industry can fall prey to some of those unfair
yeah.
characterizations of inclusive design.
Sure, sure. No,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Cool. I'm
Mm.
gonna nip through a few of the comments and questions, and then if there's anything else you wanted to mention, we'll still have time for that as well. But yeah, just a few things coming in. So, Abby, who we know,
Hey, Abby.
great
Hey, Abby.
interview. Your panel is awesome.
I think so too.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. So, and these will be a little bit, some of these came in while we were talking earlier. So
Mm,
Gavin's asked a specific question. There's a lot of info in the press over COVID-19 around the negative aspects of being disabled, but I hear of many personal
mm.
stories where people have had good experiences.
Yeah.
Does the press reflect minority views in your experience, or are there other factors at work here?
I think that's really interesting question. You probably, Gavin, are aware of the recent hubbub over, in a positive way, over the, oh gosh, what's the name of that? That video game that just came out, Last of
Ah,
Us 2.
yes, yes.
Yes. So, that's an example of now this is an interesting one actually, because it's an example of positivity towards accessibility and inclusion, but it's also presenting what is quote unquote an accessible product as something where you go in and you manipulate a lot of settings. So
Mm,
it's actually the difference between um, pervasive inclusive design or persistent, and optional inclusive
mhm.
design, right? So again, some of the mainstream products we were looking at for the CFAB work was about just pervasive inclusive design. Both are universal,
Yeah.
both attempt to be inclusionary for everybody. So anyway, that's a long way around of answering the question, which is to say, I think the media gets a balance of it. I think they don't always get the nuances that we're after, though. So while I completely celebrate this amazing game, and I'm not a huge gamer, but I kind of like to keep my ear to the ground. And
Mhm.
Last of Us 1 was a good game, but Last of Us 2 really looks to be making strides and taking people's inclusive experiences into at heart. But it still interestingly illustrates some of these more nuanced distinctions, and I think the media aren't quite getting those. Well,
I
not
think
really a big surprise, I guess.
yeah, no, and I was
Mm,
gonna say that my side of the media angle is it's not even that it's only negative or it's only
mm,
positive.
yeah,
It's both to the extremity. So it's, oh my
yeah,
God, there's people with disability that are not gonna have a ventilator and the care money is gonna go, and it's like really bad.
yeah,
And then it's like amazingly good that wow, everyone can work at home and be included in the workplace. But life isn't that binary, and I think not just that they're different people within the community with varying experiences, but even an individual has different days, months, etc. That they have different ways about life. So yeah, I think you're right. They lose the nuance and the context, and it's just that extreme.
but I'm a very big optimist at heart, and I have to say, as I said, over the past 5 or 6 years, I have seen awareness around inclusive design grow exponentially. So I think the stage is set, for some of these middle ground, middle path, perhaps, if we can use a Buddhist term, perspectives to kind of gain prominence, because people really are, and it's very encouraging to see people are, uh, you know, um, tuning in to inclusive design and the
Yeah.
benefits of inclusive design.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the influencer side as well, is that you've just got everyday people talking about everyday experiences, and
Yeah,
they might only reach one, five, 10,000 people as an individual. And I say only, that's still a lot of people
yeah,
anyway. But that
yeah,
accumulates up as well, that you've got a community of disabled influencers reaching an even bigger cumulative audience. And they're not sensational. It's just everyday life. And I know you're going to get some Instagrammers that have got the stereotype we've all seen on the news, but again, influencers are not all that way. It
yeah,
very often is very interesting people doing interesting things,
yeah.
but that doesn't make a good story on the mainstream media to talk about that. So
That's
yeah,
right.
the media, love them or hate them, they're around, and they have an important role as well in different ways. So yeah, we'll move on to the other comments. So David from LinkedIn, really nice interview.
David,
David Burdos, yeah.
nice
Um,
to hear from you, David.
we've got
Juliet.
Juliet saying yes, electrosensitivity is a real issue, but on the other hand, it is really great so much more is online when we're able to access health-wise. Yes, a flexible hybrid of online and offline is likely a good way forward where this can be done, maybe. So that was obviously where we were talking earlier about the sort of online, offline benefits and at the moment and in general. 100% from Gavin, 100% universal design. Surely this is the way forward. Love this talk. It's making me smile. Super positive and a super justification for my own work. So, a
Yeah.
lot of alignment going on here. And Juliet, totally agree about inclusive design being good design. So, yeah, we just wanted to catch up with some of the comments and thoughts coming in. Very, very positive and in agreement. I think, like you said, you're very much a positive optimist, and I am too. And I think, yes, there are real issues and barriers, and we have to acknowledge them and understand them. But I still think the only way is to look at what's possible, not just to point out the problems all the time, because that's what will lead society to the right destination.
And we've seen it time and again. And I mean, I like to often make this point, is that designers, if they're worth their salt, should not be ever afraid of challenges. In fact, constraints is what makes for good design. So the
Mm,
fact that you're introducing constraints into the equation, um, it is a it. I think most designers would relish the opportunity for innovation that come out of those constraints.
yeah, agree.
So yeah, that's the core. That's why I'm an optimist, is because everything is a creative opportunity,
Yeah.
uh, and it's the right thing to do. And that's very, very true. And in 2020, as my prime minister once said back in Canada in 2015, why do you have so many women on your cabinet? Because it's 2015,
Hmm.
right? That famous statement. In the
Yeah.
same way, why are we doing inclusive design as mainstream design? Because it's 2020, and come on.
Yeah. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, Tom, we'll start winding up. It's been I knew it was going to be a good one today. I've been
Oh
looking
yeah,
forward to
I
it.
enjoyed myself.
And I think we could go on for another hour or two. There's so much
Sure.
to
Yeah.
talk about. But yeah, thanks for your time and for coming on the show. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we close?
No, just obviously hoping everybody out there is safe and managing. We're all getting through this lockdown together. But yes, let's keep up the good work. And I just feel very privileged to be in a position where I can lend a hand in that.
Brilliant, brilliant. And where can people? What's the Open Inclusion email address? Also, well, the email, or I was going to say the website, but
The
what's the
website,
website?
yeah, the website is openinclusion.com.
Hmm.
And the email address, you can just email me directly, tom@openinclusion.com, or you can email our contact@openinclusion.com
Brilliant.
as well, which is what you get via the Contact Us page.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again, Tom. Really, really great chat. Good luck with everything coming up, and I'll see you next Thursday morning for our,
Yeah, sounds
for our
good, Martin.
fortnightly chat
Take
anyway.
care. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow for the next episode of the Daily Sip. Bye bye for now.